welcome back. My name's Aaron. This is 3D Studio Max 2016 and the interface overview. Alright, so when you launch 3D Studio Max 2016, you're going to see a startup item box that pops up here, which is going to show you some startup templates that they have, which is original startup template, sample architectural, sample outdoor HDRI, courtyard, sample studio, and sample underwater. And then also you have your recent files that are located right here. Right now we don't concern ourselves with this, so we are going to shut this off by clicking on the X. When you start up 3D Studio Max, you're going to see these boxes that are going to be right here and located on the screen. If you want to shut them off, the best method to do that is right here. You'll see them, they're in blue, so you can turn them off there and turn this one off as well, which will give you more screen real estate on your screen. Alright, what you're seeing at first glance right now is the viewports right here. These are called viewports, and you have top view right here indicated by the title right here, top, front, and you have the left side, and you also have perspective. You'll know what viewport you're in by clicking on the box that you're in by the highlighted icon around the box. And it'll also show you your grid lines that are in here, telling you, your basic surface line area. You'll notice the grid also has a dark black line in here, which will tell you your basic origin point, and this is the center of 000 on the universe of the area. Each box here has a perspective multi-box area where you can also move your shapes and move things around here. If you ever are lost or for whatever reason this thing's out of place and you don't know where you go, you can always click this little area. If you move your mouse over, it'll highlight right here. Clicking this will get you back to 0 and get you all squared away. Some tips to consider here. This area over here is your create dialog box, if you will, where you can make all your shapes and add sorts of things right here. This is your create tab, your modify tab, your hierarchy tab, your motion tab, your display tab, and your utilities tab. Primarily we're going to focus only on the create tab and the modify tab. Those are your two most important tabs that are here, which allows you to create geometry, shapes, lights, cameras, helpers, space warps, and systems. Alright, so right now I'm going to click on the box tool just to give you a quick heads up and go to my perspective tool and drag out a shape of a box right here. You'll notice if you want to change your viewport icon here, you'll see how it has perspective. I can change this to top view, which is the top view, which is recognizing this, and it is I'm able to change this to front, all sorts of different ways like that. I'm going to leave it in perspective view for right now. And in order to move around this object, there's a couple icons or things you got to keep in mind when manipulating an object in 3D Studio Max. Your middle mouse button, if you scroll in and scroll out, that's your zoom. If you press and hold your middle mouse button, that is your pan, okay, where you can like grab and move it and pan around. If you hold down your Alt key, which is next to your space bar, if you hold the Alt key down and press your middle mouse button, you will be able to rotate around an object. Now, if your object is not selected, for example, over here, if I hit escape and it's not selected, and I hold the Alt key down, I will rotate around where my mouse is located. But if I do have an object selected, indicated by the blue box around it, it will rotate around that object that's in the scene. Alright, so let me recenter this and get that squared away. If you want to center your object in the 000 position, you'll see that right now it's kind of off-center in your top view, it's off-center in your front view, well, it's kind of flat there. And the way that we do that is down in our timeline right here. Our timeline starts from 0 to 100 frames, and you can extend that or shrink that to your desire, and I'll explain that in a later video. But right now, in order to move this box into its shape to 000 position, you need to use these tools that are above right here. You have an undo button, you have the redo button, a link tool which basically allows you to link two objects together, and when you move one object it'll move the other at the same time. A unlink selection, meaning it'll break the connection between one item and another, and you can move one freely while the other one stays the same. You have your bind to space warps, which allows you to add special effects, which is also related to here. So you notice the space warps here and the space warps link icon, which will allow you to add special effects to an object or particle emitter to that object, and we'll go into that later on. You have your selection tools. This is how to select an object. If you see the bounding boxes that are here, not so bad. If you have a lot of items in your scene, you can use the select by name tool and click that, and it'll bring a dialog box up that will tell you what items are in your scene, and you can select the item that's in there and rename it if you'd like to. Should you have like 500 boxes and you need to know which box is the right box that you're looking for. The other thing right here is the rectangular selection tool. You can use this. This is what's currently the marquee tool. If you want to click and hold that, you'll see there's different options. You can use the circle box, same type of thing. It's just different shapes for you. And this one is to window crossing. So if I have an object and any time this box crosses an object, it will select it, or it has to be entirely engulfed in it. Otherwise, it will not select it. Notice how I am not able to select this box unless I engulf it. So you also have your most important tools right here, your move, rotate, and scale tool. These tools are the most important tools that you'll use, and the keyboard shortcuts for them are W, E, and R on your keyboard. So W will get you the move tool, the E will get you the rotate tool, and the R will get you the scale tool. Now, once in the move tool, for example, now you'll see down below your ribbon bar here, your track bar, you'll see these X, Y, and Z coordinates. If you right-click down here, right-click, and right-click, that'll zero these out. And notice your box is now centered along the X, Y, and Z axis. Alright, moving forward, if you want to rotate, hitting the E key, you can rotate along different planes, left and right, up and down, or you can freely rotate it in a way where you can just kind of go any which way you want. The scale tool is another important tool. When you're scaling, you can scale along the Z-axis, but notice how it gets distorted. Not very good for what we want to do. You can always press Control-Z to undo something, or use the backspace undo buttons that are located in either of these two locations. When scaling something, I highly recommend that you scale using the middle area here, which will uniformly scale the object in all directions, and it'll scale it up or down depending on your desire for what you're looking for. Moving along, we have a couple different items here that you're not really going to be too considerate with, but you have pivot points if you want to affect the pivot point of where something is rotated, for example, or moved, which way, when you're looking at something. You have select and manipulate tool, which we're not going to get into right now. You have snap tools. If you want to rotate and snap items at a certain degree, it'll snap to increments of like 35, 10. See, as you can see here, just above my mouse, you see how it's going in increments of 5. That's the snap tool using the magnetic snap. You can do percentages and things like that. You can do name selector. We'll set that later. We'll talk about that later. You have your mirror tool if you want to mirror an object to one another. M for mirror. You have align tool, very much like your text box in Microsoft Word. You can align it to the left, center, or right. You also have toggle Scene Explorer. Your Scene Explorer is the item that we just closed out earlier. You can shut that off. You also have your toggle Layer Explorer, which will show you all the layers and things that are nested within in each other, and we'll get into that later. You have your toggle ribbon, which is the bar that was up top here, which you're not really going to use too much, so we'll shut that off. You have your curve editor. Your curve editor is going to show you all your different shapes of positions where your X, Y, and Z positions for animating. You'll be using this a lot, but not right now. You can look at your schematic view. Again, you probably will not be using this, so I will shut that off. You have your curve, I said that already. The material editor right here. M for materials is the shortcut for this. You'll be using this button a lot, and this is where you add special textures to your items to make them more realistic and create amazing effects using the material slate editor. I will shut that off for right now. You also have your render setup button right here, which is very important when you want to render out to your final product to say YouTube, or to an online film, or to something as a picture. You can set up single, 0 to 100, the range of frames that you want from 0 to 100 down here. You can also change what size of your render viewport you want to show. Right now it's defaulted to 640 by 480. You can change that to custom widths, or go, NTSC video, HD video, and go to different sizes. Keep in mind, the larger your size of render, the longer it's going to take to render out that image or sequence of images. Now, you also have your render output right here. This is where you're going to render and where your files are going to be saved. And you also have down below here your assigned render and how fast you want your render, whether it's mental ray or something else. And we'll get into that later. Moving forward, you have your frame window. When you hit F9 on your keyboard, it will showcase the item that is located here. So if I hit F9 and I hit render, it's going to show you the render view of this area. So if I go switch my viewport to the front view and I hit F9 on my keyboard, you'll see the item has changed to my front view of that, what I'm looking for. It just gives you a preview, render production, if you're going to do more than one render. You also have your render farm, which you can render to the cloud and have other computers render out your scene. Should you have a long animation and you don't have time for it or don't have the resources, you can pay Autodesk server farms to render out a batch file for you and pay for that, and they will render it and then give it back to you, which is quite convenient should you have like a long Pixar film or something like that you want to render out, and you want to have them do that. Alright, moving forward, you also have your toolbar up top here, which is, I'm not going to get into too much, but it's basically your edit tools. Everything you see here is all going to be explained in later episodes and later videos. So you also have your workspace, your open, save, files here, undo. You also have the 3D Studio Max icon button, which also showcases pretty much the same thing: new, open, save as, import, exports, and things of that nature. Alright, so one important thing to think about when you want to create an object is the size of your grid. Alright, the way you change your grid, you can go to 3D Studio Max, Manage, and under, not Manage, you're going to go to Options. And under Options, what you're going to do here, you're going to look for Viewports. Where is it? Excuse me. Hold on one second. No, it's not going to be View. You're going to do Customize, and it's going to be Customize UI and Default Switcher. Unit setup, right here, unit setup. That's exactly where it is. See, customize unit setup, and under unit setup, you're going to see whether your grid size is in units, whether it's in U.S. standard feet and inches, or if it's using metrics or different styles that are there. Generally speaking, for right now, we're going to just stick with the default units, but that's where you would go change your grid size, and you can change that. Over here on the right, I told you that you can use your create geometry. You can use boxes by clicking and dragging, and you can see your parameters that are here for that box. Should you click off that box or do something else and you escape that box, just hit escape on your keyboard, and what you can see here is to go and edit the shape of this box, you have to now go to the modify tab that's located right here on the top right, and you'll see these same things that are here, that you can change the size for your item, and hitting the tab key will get you to go down to the next box. Alright, so I will explain how these shapes work, but this is the basic overview of 3D Studio Max 2016. This is your timeline. This is your keys, your locations for your items. Here, as you see, these change. You have your keyframes, auto keys, which we'll get into later. You have your play commands. One last thing, if you want to increase the size of your viewports, one of these viewports, you can go to the bottom right and toggle the view using that to enlarge it. Oftentimes, it's great to look at an object a lot closer. If you want to get out of wireframe or change the viewport, you can change this by going to shaded or going into bounding box or hidden lines or clay to get that. If you want to hide your grid and you don't need your grid because it's getting distracting, you can hit G on your keyboard. Notice I hit G and I have to move my mouse over the window I want it to be disappeared in using the G command. Alright, I hope this helps out you guys. This is 3D Studio Max 2016 basic introduction to the interface over here. And one last tip for you guys: if you're in realistic and you have a lot of shapes in there, you might want to take it off realistic because the computer might render slowly and your computer will start to chug and go slow with manipulating objects. So just go to shaded or go down to wireframe to make things a lot easier for your manipulation. Thanks for joining me. My name's Aaron, 3D Studio Max 2016 Interface Overview. Thanks.